For years, I've had questions about something called uterine fibroids, non-cancerous tumors that can develop during childbearing years. My mom had them, her mom had them, and her mom's mom too, plus all my aunts. My sisters and I wonder if we'll have them too.
It's good to see you.
Recently, my mom and I decided to talk about it.
When did you first hear the word fibroids?
I'll never forget, one day I was at work, and all of a sudden I had this horrible, horrible pain, and I ended up going to the emergency room that night.
Since she was a teen, my mom struggled with incredibly difficult menstrual cycles, pain that she says was dismissed by her doctors at the time.
I had to have been about 15.
So that was around the time your cycle started?
Yes.
Years later in the ER, my mom learned she had fibroids and that one of them had burst. Doctors said her only option was a hysterectomy, removal of the uterus.
I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. Thinking that maybe it would bypass me, even though my mom had experienced it, my grandmother and my two sisters.
And how old were you when you first found out you had fibroids?
36, 37, somewhere in there.
5 years older than me.
Instead of having a hysterectomy like all the women in our family before her, my mom decided to live with the symptoms, prolonged periods, heavy bleeding, and pelvic pain for more than a decade.
I would say if you had a scale, I would put it at a 9. The cramps were that bad. The bleeding, it's coming through your clothes, and then I was anemic.
I remember you coming home and just sitting in the room in the dark and in your bed. What was it like for you emotionally?
I was very self-conscious. A lot of times I just felt like I would prefer not to even go to work. I would just rather stay at home.
To me, that sounds very lonely.
It was depressing, but I don't know, it's just like you just felt like you didn't want to be around people.
More than 25% of black women ages 18 to 30 have fibroids. That's compared to only 7% of white women. As black women hit 40, the number goes up to 60% or even higher. That's based on a review of the studies out there, but doctors say research is sparse. The reasons for the disparity are unclear. Doctors say risk factors may include starting periods earlier in life, genetics, and obesity.
We suffer in silence oftentimes.
Dr. Anika Bell-Gray has treated me all of my adult life. She's also my mom's doctor.
I remember when I was 18 or 19 coming to you for an appointment and being like, am I going to be able to have kids? Do you remember that?
I do remember.
I was worried, and I'm still worried, especially as a black woman in my 30s who would like to have kids one day. Are hysterectomies the only option?
They aren't.
Still, because fibroids are often diagnosed so late, black women are almost 4 times more likely to have a hysterectomy, roughly a third occurring during childbearing years.
What needs to change in order to address that and help to eliminate some of those disparities?
Rarely do we get into the details of how was your cycle? How long are you bleeding? How do we establish a screening method that actually captures this earlier before it becomes so problematic that now we're talking about major treatment strategies?
If I or one of my sisters came to you and said we had fibroids, what would you hope would be different for us?
I just hope that there's something else out there and that you wouldn't have to go through what I did.
All right, Priscilla joins us now in studio. First off, Priscilla, thank you for sharing such a personal story. I know our viewers are learning a lot, including myself. I want to ask you, your mom said that initially this wasn't diagnosed. Doctors weren't telling her exactly what it was. Why is that?
Yeah, so she had painful periods for a very long time, and it was sort of dismissed. And then when she had this sort of fibroid burst, that's when she learned that she had them. And by then, it was so severe that the only option was to get a hysterectomy. And so part of the concern is the need to do more research in the asymptomatic phase to be able to diagnose this before the only option is that hysterectomy.
So you said that there were other options. You mentioned that in your story besides a hysterectomy. What are they?
Yeah, the doctor that I spoke with talked about things like birth control, which can help to sort of control some of that heavy bleeding, and also other medications that can help to shrink the fibroids and control some of that. But those medications can only be given if it's caught at a certain stage.
So, as journalists, we always want to shine a light on subjects, especially subjects that people don't know about or things that are underreported. But I'm curious, for you, was this a little bit of both? Did you want this issue out here, but did you also want to get some I don't know if it's closure, but just some facts about the issue?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm approaching an age where I'm thinking about having kids, and to hear that, you know, my mom found out she had fibroids and would have her uterus removed when she was 5 years older than me makes me think about my own fertility and what my future might hold. And it was important for me to go back and have this conversation with her, because I remember as a teenager watching her go through all of this and thinking to myself, is this going to happen to me one day?
It crushed me hearing about your mom just being by herself in the dark in her bed. Is this something she couldn't talk about?
Yeah. And the doctor that I spoke with says this is the case for a lot of women. It's embarrassing. It is an isolating experience. And my mom even told me that when she spoke to her mom about it, she was basically like, you know, this is something we've all had to experience. It's just a part of life. And so to hear my mom say that she hopes for something different for myself and my sisters if we have this condition is really important to me.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.